Welcome to session 3 of the Gifts Compass certification training in Jung's psychological types. In this session, we will be considering the 4 extroverted orientations to conscious experience. These are the indispensable orientations that sustain the progress of civilization. They're each oriented primarily to both the present and the past, sustaining the systems, norms, standards, and innovations that enable people to live and work together productively and harmoniously. They are, of course, also indispensable for an individual to live in this material world. In this session, we will take a quick look at the whole theater of individuation again, the individual psyche, to confirm the orientation of each of the extroverted types to the outer object versus the orientations of each of the introverted types to the inner object. We will consider each of the 4 types individually, exploring some of their attributes using the 5 comparative categories introduced in session 2. Note that with the 5 comparative categories, we are not inventing yet another system of typology. The only purpose for using the categories is to more thoroughly understand Jung's original model. Finally, we look again at the GCI compass, introduce the film for this session, and review the 2 organizing questions. We will be considering ego orientations exclusively to the outer object. Though this condition, where all 4 extroverted types are preeminent in consciousness, is fairly unusual, it will be useful to consider the extroverted types together to begin to note some of their commonality. The extroverted attitude renders each of these types more compatible. Extroverted sensation and extroverted intuition, though functionally opposite, as composite attitudes become more compatible and take on similar attributes. Extroverted thinking and extroverted feeling, though also functionally opposite, as composite attitudes become more compatible and take on similar attributes. And the extroverted rational types are naturally compatible with the extroverted receptive types. As we noted in session 1, if the ego orientations are primarily extroverted, then the unconscious will typically adopt introverted orientations that set up a tension of opposites that will be instrumental for the processes of individuation. So these are the 4 extroverted orientations. Extroverted feeling, where we have as an example of this type in action, Queen Elizabeth I. Extroverted sensation, represented by Julia Child. Extroverted intuition, represented by Andrew Carnegie. And extroverted thinking, represented by Charles Darwin. My book, Jung's Indispensable Compass, reviews the attributes of each of these individuals that are consistent with the type they represent. Note that these individuals represent the types, but the types do not represent the individuals. We are not pigeonholing any of them with a type label. They all, no doubt, had other types available to them, and with individuation, their array of type dispositions likely expanded. We're only saying that we can see the type under consideration well in evidence in their lives. We begin this tour, as Jung did, with extroverted thinking. Remember that logic is the orientation or governing principle for thinking. That functional orientation is merging with the extroverted directional orientation to the outer object. With these 2 orientations merging, they form a new orientation. So conceptually, imagine what happens when logic is applied to the stuff of the world, the various things, events, people, facts, and data that may be in seeming disarray. What would logic do with the objects of the world? Logic would want to create some kind of rational order. We could say that the new combined orientation of logic and the outer object together could be order. For Jung, the facts of the world are not just tangible. They also include well-accepted ideas, ideas that are already present as presumed facts. He says, this type will, by definition, be a man whose constant endeavor is to make all his activities dependent on intellectual conclusions, which in the last resort are always oriented by objective data, whether these be external facts or generally accepted ideas. We will see that the extroverted orientation supplies another attribute to the composite orientation. It orients logic extensively. That is, it is oriented to the many facts, data, and events contained in the outer object. When we consider the introverted types, we will see the composite orientation is intensive, not extensive. The extroverted attitude also has a sort of built-in sensation function. For thinking by itself is only oriented to logic, and extroverted libido alone would not be able to perceive the outer object, only apply energy toward it. So for thinking to be able to work with the stuff of the world, it must first recognize that it exists. The extroverted attitude theoretically supplies that function for extroverted thinking. The extroverted attitude both applies energy and enables the perception of the outer object. So how might we characterize the composite attitude of thinking and extroversion? To consider what is happening in that combination, we might say that it has a readiness to perceive order. It assembles the many perceived parts into a composite order. Or as Jung says, it begins with the part and makes the whole into an assemblage. The role of the thinking function is changed as a composite attitude. It is no longer just the function of thinking itself. It is thinking in relation to the outer object. We might say that its new functional role is constructive thinking, or as Jung says, even when it analyzes, it constructs. Two other comparative categories may help to see how the extroverted types are highly compatible. They are not categories from Jung's lexicon and have only been developed to more thoroughly understand the types. They are composite substance and composite scope. How would we characterize the substance of this form of thinking? What might we call it? We might consider the substance of thinking to be thoughts, and the substance of thinking directed to the outer object, outer thoughts. Jung notes that the extroverted types have a common orientation to the particular, that is, the individual elements of the outer object, rather than a holistic view of them. We could consider the scope of extroverted thinking to be particular order. That is, an order that is assembled from many particular parts. It moves from the parts to the whole. So these are the 5 categories for our first extroverted type, extroverted thinking. We will find them useful for more thoroughly understanding each type as they appear in consciousness, in the unconscious, and in their collaboration or opposition among other types. We created these categories in an attempt to understand the most enigmatic of the types, introverted sensation. Then we applied them to all the types and discovered their usefulness for understanding commonalities, compatibilities, and oppositions. They are not intended to be a new dogmatic system of typology. Use them if you find them helpful to frame Jung's comments about each of the types. What is most important is that you gain a good working familiarity with each of Jung's original types, irrespective of the framework you use for understanding them. The aim is for you to see these types in the stories and lives of the people you are working with. Jung says extroverted thinking carries a ruling formula that guides its decision making. He says, if the formula is broad enough, this type may play a very useful role in social life as a reformer or public prosecutor or purifier of conscience, or as the propagator of important innovations. So this is some of what we might say about people who favor extroverted thinking. They can be quick to judge, for their ruling formulas of right and wrong, or good and bad, have been firmly established. They like to think rationally. They use logical analysis to organize firsthand experience and derive conclusions based on objective data. They are empiricists, focusing their attention on concrete experience. They enjoy devising timetables or schedules to organize projects, processes, or people. They are often productive, positive, and orderly. They may be found constructing improved standards, policies, procedures, organizations, buildings, or operating environments. Wherever there's a need to create tangible order out of the seeming chaos of many factors. They are decisive, well-organized, rational, and dependable. They often take on managerial roles. Many scientific pursuits require their gifts, as do medical, business, military, and industrial enterprises. Business managers, construction foremen, engineers, physicians, judges, or attorneys could serve as living examples of extroverted thinking in action. Jung suggested Charles Darwin as an example. Practical leaders like General George Patton, famed for his tenacious leadership in the Second World War, former Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, or Jack Welch, former CEO of General Electric, could also provide biographical windows to this type. The orientation for feeling is value, and the orientation for extroverted libido is the outer object. So conceptually, imagine what happens when value is applied to the stuff of the world, the various things, events, people, facts, and data. How will an orientation to value, a rational function, make sense of the outer object? It will seek a harmony in the outer object with valuations. It will empathize with the values of others. We could say that the new combined orientation of value and the outer object together could be norms. That is, the values already present in the culture, the group, or the individual. What is already valued by others will be valued by extroverted feeling. Jung says feeling in the extroverted attitude is likewise oriented by objective data, the object being the indispensable determinant of the quality of feeling. Its new composite attitude could be termed a readiness to perceive norms. Jung says, even when it appears not to be qualified by a concrete object, it is nonetheless still under the spell of traditional or generally accepted values of some kind. And its new functional role might be termed social feeling. Without it, says Jung, a harmonious social life would be impossible. The substance could be considered outer valuations, and the scope, particular norms. With that framework in mind, we can begin to understand how extroverted feeling might show up in life. Jung notes, this kind of feeling is very largely responsible for the fact that so many people flock to the theater or to concerts or go to church, and do so, moreover, with their feelings correctly adjusted. Fashions, too, owe their whole existence to it. And what is far more valuable, the positive support of social, philanthropic, and other such cultural institutions. In these matters, extroverted feeling proves itself a creative factor. People who favor extroverted feeling seek harmony among and with others. They are adept at empathizing with others and to feeling collective norms, tastes, styles, fashions, and values. They adjust their own feeling values to affirm the agreeable harmony of collective values. They are vital carriers and proponents of traditional values for the organization, the community, the family, the culture, or the nation. In naturally affirming collective norms, they generate further support for those values wherever they go. People who favor extroverted feeling can quickly adapt to many diverse situations. At one moment, they can be solemn with someone who is sad or troubled. In the next, they can put on a smiling face for a celebration or lively party. They're highly attuned to the feelings and values of people around them. They also may be politically correct, for they are very aware of the norms and values of the culture or the group they are in. They may regard a work of art as beautiful, for example, not necessarily because they inwardly feel it to be beautiful, but because they know that it is widely acknowledged as such. What conforms to cultural values will likely be favorably received. What does not may be shunned or ignored. People who favor extroverted feeling value relationships, lots of them. They're often highly gregarious and expressive. They're good communicators and adept at making others feel comfortable and valued. They enjoy moving from one social situation to the next, typically feeling at ease with people around them wherever they go, because their empathy is so well developed. It's not hard for them to strike up conversations. Many group settings require social feeling. Leaders and organizers, event planners, talk show hosts, activity directors, managers, recruiters, and public relations specialists are among the many types of careers where extroverted feeling may be found. People who love to be with people, who enjoy associations and clubs, who delight in group gatherings, provide a window to these gifts. We might think of Queen Elizabeth I, who needed this type to govern a diverse people, Lorraine Kelly, Scottish television presenter and journalist, Oprah Winfrey, or Brian Williams, host of the 11th Hour on MSNBC. With extroverted sensation, the composite orientation is much easier to imagine. The extroverted attitude amplifies the functional attitude. Neither is changed in the merger. The orientation of both is to the outer object, or what we might simply term facts. Hence, the orientation of such an individual accords with purely sensuous reality. The attitude remains the same as the functional attitude. It is to perceive facts. Says Jung, however, it is only concrete, sensuously perceived objects or processes that excite sensations for the extrovert. Those exclusively which everyone everywhere would sense as concrete. The new functional role is virtually the same role as the original function, realistic sensation. When people say he or she is a sensation type, they're invariably referring to extroverted sensation. For as we will see, introverted sensation takes on attributes that are much closer to introverted intuition. We might consider the substance of this sort of sensation to be outer perceptions and the scope to be particular facts. The facts being perceived, that is, the content of the outer object, are perceived individually rather than holistically. Jung says his love is unquestionably rooted in the physical attractions of its object. He is conspicuously well adjusted to reality. That is his ideal. And it even makes him considerate of others. He dresses well, as befits the occasion. He keeps a good table with plenty of drink for his friends, making them feel very grand. He may even convince them that certain sacrifices are decidedly worthwhile for the sake of style. To feel the object, to have sensations, and if possible, to enjoy them, that is his constant aim. People who favor extroverted sensation tend to be aware of every fact, every detail, every fine point. Many particular details are of interest and are accurately recorded. Like scanning radar, their senses are forever at work, detecting their immediate environment in all the glorious detail that includes. They are keen to take in many particular facts. It is not simply the one singular fact that is of interest, but the many. The taste, smell, sight, sound, and touch of everything, each nuance, each variation, is another fact registered about life experience. Those perceptions that register the greatest intensity will be the most influential. Enjoying many nuanced perceptions is real life being lived to the full. There is no need to bridge the gap between what is and what might be. The present moment is more than enough. They are practically grounded in concrete reality. Accuracy is their watchword. They would make very reliable eyewitnesses, for they remember the smallest details. They can be excellent proofreaders, for they involuntarily notice even tiny errors when reading. They perceive with the precise subjective lens of a camera, but unlike a camera, they perceive with the full palette of sensory experience. Their aim is active and tangible experience of the world, and their lively interactions with it bring much enjoyment. They're often fun-loving. Their love of experience makes them lovers of life. Conspicuously well-adjusted to reality as they find it, they adapt quickly to their environment and new natural, social, and political situations. They can feel at home wherever they go, reveling in each new experience for its own sake. Coaches, teachers, medical professionals, athletes, personal trainers, physical therapists, and business people are examples of the many diverse kinds of work where this type orientation can be found. Julia Child, the television chef who brought French cooking to America, could provide a biographical window to these gifts, as could tennis great Rafael Nadal, Olympic champion Usain Bolt, or Turkish adventurer, businessman, sportsman, television presenter Serdar Kilik. With extroverted intuition, we encounter the perplexing contents of one of the crossover types. It starts with an orientation to the inner object and ends, by virtue of the dominance of the extroverted orientation, with an orientation to the outer object. How could we characterize the resulting orientation that commingles both objects and crosses the great divide? Because it is extroverted, the orientation will be, once again, extensive, oriented to the many. But in this case, with intuition, it is oriented with extroversion to what is there, but also with intuition to what is not there. Intuition brings its imagination to see around corners in between and among the existing perceptions. Intuition is instrumental in orienting to imagined possibilities. So we could say that the orientation of extroverted intuition is to extensive possibilities. Jung says, in the extroverted attitude, intuition as the function of unconscious perception is wholly directed to external objects. The composite attitude of extroverted intuition will be a readiness to perceive those possibilities. Jung says, just as extroverted sensation strives to reach the highest pitch of actuality, because this alone can give the appearance of a full life, so intuition tries to apprehend the widest range of possibilities, since only through envisioning possibilities is intuition fully satisfied. With the extroverted attitude added to the attitude of intuition, something happens where it is not simply enough to perceive the possibilities, they must also be made real. There is an energetic component that induces action toward a desired possibility. So we could consider the new functional role catalytic intuition, or as Jung says, it is constantly seeking fresh outlets and new possibilities in external life. Intuition is rich in imagination, in this case focused outward toward the outer object, so we could consider the substance to be outer imagination. The scope of the other extroverted types has been to the particular. In the case of extroverted intuition, we could say that the scope is to particular possibilities. Jung says of a person with this type orientation, he seizes on new objects or situations with great intensity, sometimes with extraordinary enthusiasm, only to abandon them cold-bloodedly, without any compunction and apparently without remembering them, as soon as their range is known and no further developments can be divined. So long as a new possibility is in the offing, the intuitive is bound to it with shackles of fate. The intuitive is never to be found in the world of accepted reality values, but he has a keen nose for anything new and in the making. Because he is always seeking out new possibilities, stable conditions suffocate him. People who favor extroverted intuition possess boundless enthusiasm for seeking and realizing possibilities. They are forever on the move, seeking out the next opportunity for improvement, innovation, or achievement. The most exciting project is always the next one. New possibilities capture their attention. Fresh, compelling opportunities, the more the better. Draw them fearlessly and boldly to the next adventure, the next creative project, the next imaginative undertaking. They can see the whole project before it's begun. The stuff of experience mixed with their visionary dreams are the raw materials for fashioning their future. They want to bridge the gap between a present situation and the possibilities latent in it. They see the future before it arrives, often accurately anticipating the outcome of events. They have a knack for knowing what will work, what can materialize, and what will prove successful. They are loyal to their visions of realized possibilities. Their enthusiasm is fueled by envisioning opportunities and by making them tangibly real. Yet as soon as a project approaches completion, they tend to lose interest. It has lost the enticing appeal of the not yet born. As long as their ventures have the lure of unborn possibility, they are bound to them as if with shackles of fate. They have little tolerance for the status quo. They're seldom content with just one enterprise. The same lure of unborn possibility is forever drawing them to the next project. Change without end is their mantra. Stable conditions suffocate them. Emboldened by their imaginative projects, they are not especially mindful of restraints or boundaries. Every norm, every operating rule, every tradition, every obstacle can be overcome by their endless passion for seizing a possibility. They wear their excitement on their sleeves, and it is infectious. They can be convincing and persuasive with their inspiring enthusiasm. Their energy spreads to others, though few can keep up with their perpetual flow of new ideas or their intuitive ability to anticipate the future. They see hidden possibilities not just in situations, but in people. They tend to have a keen grasp of the full potential of others. People who favor extroverted intuition can be found among innovators, entrepreneurs, real estate developers, inventors, and other visionaries who apply their imagination creatively to improve the material world or seize an opportunity. We could look to one of the greatest entrepreneurs of all time, the Scot Andrew Carnegie, to see these gifts in action. We can also see them in Richard Branson, founder of Virgin Airlines, Jack Ma, founder of the Alibaba Group, or Coco Chanel, who anticipated trends in the fashion and fragrance industries. With the whole table filled out, we can begin to trace some of the commonalities among the extroverted types. As a group, they are for the most part oriented to the present moment or the remembered past. Their orientations are all extensive, oriented to the many rather than to the one. They are perceiving something that currently exists. Even extroverted intuition is perceiving possibilities among what is currently present or anticipated in the future. Their scope is always to the particular elements, rather than a holistic view. Even extroverted intuition is oriented to particular possibilities, unlike introverted intuition that sees a vast panorama of holistic images. When we view the introverted types with their built-in intuition-like characteristics, we will find that they are more oriented to the new, the original, and the future. Only introverted sensation, with its functional orientation to the outer object, will have a high sensitivity to what is now or what has been. We'll be using insights from this table later on to consider possible collaborations among the types, as well as the intricacies of their oppositions. Taking a brief look at the Gift's compass diagram, we can see that the extroverted types are all aggregated to the south. We use the label from the new functional role to depict the types as gifts. The social gifts are extroverted feeling. The realistic gifts are extroverted sensation. The catalytic gifts are extroverted intuition. And the constructive gifts are extroverted thinking. The film you're watching in this session is Chef, full of extroverted energies. See if you can find some of the extroverted type orientations exemplified in the film. Note that this film, like the previous ones, is also a story of individuation. So see if you can also identify some of the key issues related to personal transformation in this film. These are the two key organizing questions for this session. Please come to the session with your answers to these questions in mind. What do each of these four extroverted types have in common? And what do you see as the strengths for each of these types? So to review, in this session, we've considered again the terms extroversion and introversion, considered each of the four extroverted types in depth, built a table of comparative categories for the extroverted types that we will be referring to throughout the course, reviewed the place of the extroverted types on the GCI compass, and considered the film and organizing questions for the next session.